It's the power. It's the power of Christ. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
You make even the devil cry! Ashes to ashes, rust to rust.
The Exorcism Crucifix. I'm going to call it Exor for short because if I have to call the Exorcism Crucifix, we are going to be here all day. It would be even worse if I call the Exorcism Crucifix by its full name, The Teachings of Spiritual Cleansing. But it's just going to be Exor. Anyway, it is a purchasable alternative to the Crucifix for Chaplain. As is tradition, we'll hear what Bubbles has to say about it. Take it away, sir.
I was up in the Jutland Peninsula when I was handed this by a priest. Rest in peace, Father Benjamin. Apologies. He said this expels the evil within. Perhaps it'll serve you well.
Father Benjamin mentioned? Jutland confirmed? Unfortunately not. However, we should dig into the Exor right away, so let's begin with some stats.
May your elves be many and your bitches few.
So the Exor costs 1200 francs in the store, which is quite a lot. It has a range of 9.8 studs, a full duration of 12 seconds, and a cooldown of 15 seconds. It also deals a percentage of a zombie's maximum health per damage tick. I'll get into more detail when I dive into its actual usage. So more or less, this is like a magic tar bottle that slowly deals damage to zombies within its radius. It only recharges its meter via either damaging zombies, using the blessing, mercy, or God forbid, the Divinity. I have a video in the top right on why I don't like the Divinity, but few people have mentioned its usefulness when paired with the Exor, therefore I have a section at the end of this video explicitly about that.
May your woes be many and your days few.
So how do we even use this thing in combat, you know? Well, of course, as described, it needs active work to refill. Thank goodness, unlike Divinity, you don't need to solely be attacking to refill this. It starts empty on every map, so you have to refill it. It is honestly pretty easy to refill the meter. So when Divinity is used, it refills the meter by 30%. Blessings fill it about 20% from what I can see, the wiki doesn't really have any numbers. And Mercy adds 100%, and stabbing zombies adds about 15 points per stab. Honestly, it is super easy to refill the meter without even using your books. The books are a great help, don't get me wrong, but regardless, spamming them won't ever get you your meter completely filled without having to recharge the book. The best way to fill the meter is to, as any good chaplain should, stab zombies and use the blessing when your team needs it. In no time, you'll gain lots of meter charge. I would also love to mention that in maps like Catacombs de Paris or St. Petersburg, using the cannons is a great help in increasing that meter. Yes, every other meter in the game that's dependent on damage can be refilled this way, but it's especially good for chaplains since they literally have the weakest melee weapon in the game. Another great way to refill the meter is in maps like Roscoff, when the zombies are still, doing their spawning animations, so they're kind of invincible, you can continuously stab them to refill the meter. In the same vein that the bugle meter works, you can shake the zombie still spawning in and gain a whole bunch of charge. As mentioned in my Roscoff guide though, please don't make a habit of stabbing the zombies spawning in the trapdoors, you'll get blown up. The Exor is pretty simple to use. You hold it out like the regular Crucifix and zombies in a similar range will get affected. However, they aren't held back by the power of the Lord. Rather, they are more or less melted by it, I guess. Set alight by a holy flame. Zombies in the range will have this greyish flame stuff like smoke coming off them, and you will obviously hear damage ticks. The zombies will be slowed, and any viral or regular runners within the range will also be stunned for 0.6 seconds every 3 seconds. The effect is on them. Further, it is actually great at Endless. I'll get into the damage stats in a minute, but since it is percentage based, it can really help take down zombies in later waves of Endless. The Chaplain is immune to any grabs during this time, which is great, but do also note it does slow down Chaplain. Now, let's actually take a closer look at those damage stats. So in the radius of the Chaplain, zombies will either receive the minimum damage percentage, which slowly ramps up, it slowly increases to the maximum percentage of damage, which would require the zombie to be only 10 studs away from Chaplain. In layman's terms, the closer you are to the zombie, the more damage you deal. The damage is a percentage based on the enemy's maximum health. For Shamblers and Igniters, it is 3.5% as a minimum and 17.5% as a maximum. Runners and Viral Runners have a 3.5% minimum and a 10% maximum. Bombers are immune to this effect because of course they are, but they are still slowed like every other zombie. And finally, Zappers, Viral Zappers and Zeraseers have a 1.5% minimum and a 10% maximum. But remember, this is dependent on how close they are to you, which means they are closer to dealing damage to you, so just be careful. There is a neat trick I will also mention. The Exorcism meter, when depleted, can only be used again when completely full, but in essence, it's kind of like the opposite of the regular Crucifix. When it depletes and you unequip it, you can refill it from whatever duration it was at before. Now, the actual usage behind this. Using the Exor right up until the hand starts going down, then unequipping it, you'll be left with a little bit of charge. If you do this every time, you can negate having to wait the 15-second cooldown period every single time, and you can just get straight back to recharging it. How awesome is that? But you do have to keep a close eye on it. And of course, the more you use the Exor, the more you'll get familiar with like your timings and the better you'll be at it. Now unfortunately, this item has quite a few limitations.
I've never had a fight like this before!
So the Exor isn't as great as it's cracked up to be, at least in my opinion. Keeping in mind how absolutely epic the regular default Crucifix is, keeping zombies back, they can't even get close to you, is amazing. The Exor is kind of a letdown. You're telling me that for nearly the cost of 2 horse artillery pistols, you get a Crucifix that just slowly damages zombies. Like sure, unlike the normal Crucifix, this one you're actually taking down the zombies yourself. You're actually damaging them yourself. However, it isn't the strongest weapon out there. Furthermore, the regular Crucifix can actually help your teammates in a proper situation. It holds them back while they defend, build barricades or something like that. The Exor just slows them down. Honestly, I just didn't really like using it, and I didn't like how it wasn't available from the get-go. Like from the start of the map I couldn't just wham, get the zombie out of the way. No, because I had to recharge it, right? There are some good benefits, don't get me wrong. Like I would prefer to use this in later waves of Endless, for example. That would be great. But, because, of course, percentage based on the maximum health, it would be better in Endless because the zombie health continuously increases. But for the everyday player, it isn't so much an upgrade as it is sort of a worse side grade. Also note that since you're only slowing them down and the best damage is right up close and personal, you can very easily get scratched up by the zombies you're holding back. And that's not just a skill issue this time, since the player is slowed right down when using it. On paper and in practice, it's just a worse version of the regular Crucifix.
Let's settle this! Show me what you were made for!
You thought I would forget you? A ton of people asked me to look into pairing the Exor with Divinity in my Divinity video. So if you don't know, aside from Mercy, Divinity refills the meter of the Exorcism Crucifix by 30%, which is the second most largest refill. Both items are also refilled by an aggressive playstyle. The Divinity can help fill the Exor meter really quickly at the start of a map by spamming Divinity on teammates as spawn, which is a good use. The problem is, as decently as the two items are paired together, they are both still kind of lame. Like, I understand the premise. It works pretty decently, but that's more or less asking for 2,100 francs for a functional pair of items. 2,100 francs for 2 items that both kinda suck and the default ones are just better. That is a complete and utter rip-off in my opinion. I've played Exor with the Blessing. It works great. I loved using the Blessing. In fact, as much as I don't like using the Exor Crucifix, I still had a decent amount of fun using it. When I used it with Divinity, the same issues from the Divinity book kept reoccurring. No one wanting to take Divinity, having to stop focusing on teammates to recharge. The same issues kept recirculating. Again, in the top right, I have my video on Divinity, so please watch that for more details. But what I think the worst part about this pairing is the fact that Chaplain is simply not made for combat. It is a super short-ranged, and sure, the Exor can help recharge the Divinity a bit by its damaging abilities, but in my opinion it's just more of an uncomfortable playstyle. You have to consistently get close to the enemy with a short-range melee, which again, is the weakest in the whole game. I'll link my stake video in the pinned comment if you want to know more on that one, but Chaplain is simply not made for combat, and adding 2 and very heavily combat reliant weapons really doesn't help. With just Blessing, Exor is decent in, like, Endless. Like, it's pretty damn decent in way later waves of Endless when the zombies just have absurd amounts of health, because it's a percentage-based damage weapon. Otherwise, the default Chaplain weapons are just better overall. Divinity is paired decently, but they both just kinda suck to use, and for such a high price as well, it makes more sense to just stick with the default Chaplain weapons. So I reiterate my point from the Divinity video. Do not buy Divinity, and unless you are super into Endless and you play that all the time, the Exor just isn't really worth picking up. Thanks for watching as always, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you when I see you.